Hi, I'm Rushold. This is my lovely wife, Evalie. I'm going to be telling our story, how our threads of life came together, how we have, with God's help, with His leading, with His blessing, woven a tapestry together, and we'll see what that looks like at the end. And I'm looking forward to putting our story on tape today so I can share it. Thank you for being here. You can't go home again. That will come in towards the end of my talk this afternoon. I don't know about you, but as I look back on my life, the word coincidence gets dimmer and dimmer in my lexicon. Not many things that are of substance in my life were a coincidence. Most of them, I think, were planned. They were led by God. I'll let you figure out which are which as we go along. I'll report and you decide. Evalie Dixon, in the fall of '63, left home to go to Lodi Academy. Lodi Academy is a Seventh-day Adventist Christian boarding high school in Lodi, California. She left in September, attended school, and in mid-October, she came home on her 6 weeks leave, her first leave. When she got home, she found that her mother was in the hospital, and Pauline, her mom, passed away that first weekend. Pauline had been struggling with kidney disease for years, kidney failure. She'd been in and out of hospitals. It was a shock to Evalie, though, because she didn't realize that it had gotten that bad. But now her mom was gone. Now, no 16-year-old girl, in my opinion, and I'm sure yours too, no 16-year-old girl with her life just starting to blossom should lose her mother. But that's life here on this earth prior to Jesus' return. Evalie finished that year. The days and weeks from October till Christmas, she has no recollection of. She was just sleepwalking, more or less. She finished her junior year, then finished her senior year, and graduated in June of '65 from Lodi Academy. Her dad had met and courted a fine Adventist lady, Verna Dower, who was working at St. Helena Sands. She was the director of nurses, where Romaine was working as an anesthesiologist, and they'd gotten married. So where to go to college? Well, Evalie wanted to put a little distance between the Napa Valley, where her tragedy had occurred. So she went to Walla Walla. She wasn't sure what to do for her major. She was divided between education, elementary ed, being a teacher, and nursing. It wasn't until she got into registration lines that she decided she'd be a nurse. Her mother, after all, and now her stepmother, were both nurses. So she took nursing course at Walla Walla, did her clinicals here at Portland in the Sand. She took courses along with many classmates, including Vivian Byers, who would become Vivian Byers Robertson, and they graduated together. Vivian and Evalie sang duets in area churches from time to time. Evalie also played oboe in the orchestra, sang in the choir, so she had a rich musical background. After graduating from Walla Walla, she went down to Loma Linda, applied, and got accepted as a registered nurse, and went to work on Unit 6100, the GI floor, starting in the summer of '69. Warren, on the other hand, that's me, I went away to Academy also, to Maplewood Academy in Hutchinson, Minnesota. At that time, we were living in Minnetonka, a suburb to the west of Minneapolis. I went to Maplewood and had a much quieter 2 years than Everly Dixon had had. I also graduated in June of '69. I also went away, quotes, to college, but for a different reason. My folks were in the process of moving to Paradise, California, where my mom and dad were going to live with and care for an aging aunt, her husband, and the aunt's sister, my Aunt Ada, Uncle Ed, and Aunt Ida. Part of the deal was that they would care for the family, take care of the house. Mother would do the cooking, housework, etc. And my Uncle Ed would pay for my education. We all need a rich uncle sometimes. Well, I had one in Uncle Ed. He had become quite fortunate. He'd sold his portion of mineral rights, particularly oil, off the coast of Long Beach, California, and had been well off since then. I have no idea how he came to have those mineral rights. Without that, there's very little chance that I would have been able to stay in Christian education. My dad did paper and wallpaper and paint, high quality work, but just enough money to make it, to help me through Maplewood, but wouldn't have gone farther beyond that. So we were blessed, Ed and Ada were blessed to have family to care for them. I was blessed to get my education continued. So after Maplewood, I took the California Zephyr out to California, got off in Oroville and went up to Paradise with Ed and Ada. Got settled in my bedroom, packed for college. Ed took me down to PUC. He did his arrangements in the business office and dropped me off on the steps of Granger Hall. If you know PUC, you know that Granger Hall is the freshman dorms. So here I was at PUC. I didn't think I would know a soul. Well, here on the front steps of Granger Hall was Danny Rogers, one of my Maplewood classmates. I was thrilled to see Danny, but he was quite dejected. I said, "Danny, what's wrong?" He said, "I don't have a room." PUC in 65 was overflowing with kids, overflowing. So I said, "No problem, come on in and you can room with me." Whoops, I didn't have a room either. Fortunately, Danny had a second cousin who was a teacher in the industrial arts department. So we stayed in their guest bedroom for a couple of weeks while the college fixed up a house just off campus to put some students in. In this house, they put 2 bunks for freshmen in the front room, 2 beds, 2 freshmen in the back bedroom, and 2 bunks with 4 upperclassmen in the master bedroom to keep a lid on things, sort of. So as college years go, kids start leaving, going home for reasons ranging from poor grades, homesickness, to we think you should leave. That happens. Well, I met another freshman named Greg, also from the Lillet Academy. And his roommate left at Thanksgiving, so I got to room with Greg in the freshman dorm. At PUC, I was history major, biology minor, and pre-med. In addition to music, I played the tuba in the brass ensemble, the band. I sang 1 year in the men's chorus. So I had a rather rich musical background as well as Everly had. My second year was going to be biochemistry for 2 quarters and then quantitative analysis, 3 chemistry classes in a row. Well, my first quarter of biochem was hard. You know, I'm a reasonably intelligent guy. I study. But I asked myself, Warren, you want to study this hard? You know, it's going to be 4 years of college, 3 or 4 years of med school, a year of internship, 2 years of residency. I mean, that's a long road. And my answer was, no, I don't want to study that hard. So I didn't take my second quarter of biochem. But it didn't feel right. It just wasn't what it just didn't feel right. So I went to the guidance counselor and talked to her. She gave me a couple aptitude tests. I came back in a week or so to another appointment with her, and she had scored my tests. And she said, Warren, you need to get back in pre-med. That's where you belong. Okay. So I got back in pre-med, but it put me a year back. I call that my PUC bobble. Or if you're a basketball player like Pastor Colby and Pastor Jonathan, that would be a turnover. Put me a year back. Well, I graduated in '69, and during that senior year, I got accepted to Loma Linda Medical School. That was a high day. I'm sure you've had high days in your life. Acceptance to medical school was a high day. I finished in '70, my last year of the pre-med requirements. I had my BA in history and my minor in biology, but I had to finish pre-med before I could enroll at Loma Linda. So I finished in '70, and I enrolled in Loma Linda in September of '70. A year behind where I might have been. That's a key factor here. My second year of medical school, I should preface it with this. I was not a very social guy. I had very few dates. The young ladies interested me, but I was kind of shy. In 5 years at PUC, I probably had 5, 6 dates, which is pathetic. So here I was, my second year at Loma Linda. Halfway through the year, January, and I was rooming with Wayne, one of my PUC roommates. He was in his first year teaching band at Loma Linda Academy. He was a music major. Well, here Wayne had a roommate who wasn't dating. Wayne was active socially. He was dating a nurse. A Walla Walla '69 grad named Shirley. Shirley had a roommate who wasn't dating, named Eva Lee. So Wayne and Shirley come up with the bold idea to take their roommates with them on a blind date. So we did. We drove down to Newport for an evening out on Saturday night. Had a nice time. They dropped me off at my apartment. Wayne took the girls home. I come into class Monday morning. Well, my first impression of this Eva Lee Dixon was, she's a nice young lady. The 2 dates I'd had in medical school, one was a cold fish. No, maybe I made her a cold fish, I don't know. The other one was the sister to the wife of a friend of mine, and she plastered herself right up against me in the car. I'm looking over there and thinking, you got some room over there, don't you? Shall I open the door and slide further? I mean, So, 2 dates, no luck. Beverly, nice young lady. She was middle of the road. Like, maybe it's time to figure this dating stuff out. So I get to class Monday morning. I walk into Amphitheater A in the medical center, and I meet Bob Rushold. Bob was a classmate of mine in medical school. He and his wife Joyce lived 2 houses up the street from where Wayne and I were rooming. And Bob actually was from Lodi Academy as well, I think. Anyway, he asked me, well, how was your weekend, Warren? I said, well, it's pretty good. I had a date, blind date. Oh, who was the girl? Beverly Dixon. Bob says, oh, she's a nice girl. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think I better get this figured out. This dating thing, Here I am, 24 years old, second year of medical school. Life's passing me by. So I asked Everly out for a date. We go ice skating up at Lake Arrowhead up in the San Bernardino Mountains. Being from Minnesota, I'd done a lot of ice skating over the years, but I was woefully out of practice. She'd done some ice skating, for instance, at the Lloyd Center rink while she was here on clinicals in Portland. So we had a good time. We had another date or two, and then came St. Patrick's Day. And those of you who are friends with me on Facebook know what I did at St. Patrick's Day. I took the bold step of getting her a St. Patrick's Day card, signed my name, walked over to the parking lot at the medical center, found her blue Camaro, and slipped it under the windshield wiper. She was a little surprised. Her first card from a medical student that she just met 6 weeks before. Well, eventually I got it figured out. She warmed up to me, I warmed up to her. Things progressed pretty nicely. Later that first half of the year, we did the obligatory visits to the families. You know how it goes. I took Everly home to Paradise, California for a weekend. She met my folks. She took me to St. Helena, where her dad and stepmom were, and I met them. In St. Helena, here we are sitting at the dining room table having Sabbath dinner. And her dad, Romaine, Dr. Dixon, he's a longtime member here. Well, 10, 12 years. He knows that Everly is left-handed, so he sees me eating my dinner with my left hand. He says, well, I wonder what the children of 2 left-handed people would be. Everly kind of cringes internally. I'm a little amused, but I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, Dr. Dixon, we're not quite there yet. But things progress. So we meet in late January. Here we are coming on to July. So July 12, her birthday. We go to Rocco's Italian restaurant in Riverside, have a nice Italian dinner. Come back to her townhouse, and I propose. Having previously done the obligatory call to her dad, asking for her hand. I have a little old-fashioned streak, can you tell? And he said, oh, if she's okay with it, so are we. So I proposed, and she said yes. Another high day. Happiest medical student in Loma Linda. Maybe on the planet. So we start planning wedding. My mother lobbied for June. Clear the next June. My mother lost that discussion. December 24, 1972. at the St. Helena Church, the church of Everly's Grandpa Dixon. We united our lives into one. After a brief honeymoon in San Diego, we come back to Redlands. I carry her over the threshold. There's that old-fashioned street into our one-bedroom flat in Redlands, and we carry on. She goes back to work. By this time, she had transferred from 6100, the GI floor, to dialysis. Now she's working dialysis. And I continued my studies, and we began our married life. September 30, graduation. After graduation, I had to make up a month. Interestingly, the month I proposed, July, I had mono. So I missed a month of my clinical rotations. I missed neuropsych. So I had to make that up after graduation. Subsequent to that, we took a trip around the West to see family. Ended up in St. Helena with her folks, intending to stay for 6 to 8 weeks until it was time to go back to Kettering, where I had matched with the internal medicine residency program. Well, I got a call in mid-December. My dad had passed away. Not expected, but not a huge surprise. Dad was 50 years old when I was born. I was a child of his old age. After our wedding, my folks had left Paradise, gone back to Kettering to live with my sister. My dad's health deteriorated, particularly his mental health. He developed severe dementia, ended up in a nursing home. And in mid-December 73, he passed to his rest. So we packed up the car, drove to Minnesota, attended the internment service at Fort Snelling National Cemetery. One of the coldest December days of my life, for more than one reason. And then to Kettering. Now at Kettering at that time had houses for their interns and residents. But our house wasn't ready. It was still occupied by Ebe and Elaine Muttersbach. Our time at Kettering overlapped by about 4 months, so Everly and I were in an efficiency apartment, getting us used to small spaces. After Ebe and Elaine finished, moved to Portland, set up practice here. Ebe practiced his whole career here in Portland. We went into their house and got on with life at Kettering. Everly worked as a nurse in the operating room. I was intern and then resident. While I was resident, interestingly enough, it's amazing how many lives intersect. One of the interns under me was Calvin Hill. Calvin, of course, practices internal medicine at Tillamook, and his son Tim and his wife, Tim's wife Heidi, are members here at Sunnyside. Both of them physicians also. Everly participated in music there. She sang in a group called Dedication, which did sacred music for area churches, and did a tour once or twice a year. The last half of residency, I sang some tenor with Dedication and also played the bass guitar. In 75, June, we drove up to Maplewood for graduation at my alma mater. I had a cousin graduating. And it was time to start thinking about, where am I going to practice? Where are we going to live? Where are we going to go? So we were sitting in the gym waiting for commencement to start. Everly and I were talking. And we must have talked some about finishing residency and where we're going to live. because a gentleman sitting right in front of us turned around and introduced himself. Hi, I'm Dr. Elmer Wasmiller from Wahpeton, North Dakota. Okay. So we talked, and Dr. Wasmiller invited us to come take a look at Wahpeton for our practice location. Well, we did that. We took a trip up to North Dakota, Minnesota. We looked at Wahpeton, North Dakota, Jamestown, North Dakota, Thief River Falls, Minnesota. And I also flew out to Portland at that time, took a short visit here, looked at the clinic adjacent to the Tillamook Hospital, looked at one of the Adventist clinics here in Portland. We decided Wahpeton looked like a good place to live, a good place to practice medicine. Had a nice little church, had a nice two-room church school right across the street. There were 4, soon to be 5, and I would be 6 Seventh-day Adventist physicians in the clinic. And interestingly, the 2 oldest of the Adventist physicians, Elmer Wasmiller and Melvin Belts, had been medical school classmates of Romaine Dixon. It's amazing how many things intersect wherever you go. So Wahpeton, Breckenridge was a great small town. We took a trip up there. We found a house in Breckenridge that we really liked, an older home with stained glass panels over the big picture windows, a pocket sliding door between the living room and dining room, a really nice older home. We signed to purchase that, and while we were in Wahpeton with this visit, which was in probably mid-'76, Wesley had his first seizure. Now, Wesley was born December '75, just as I was finishing my second year. And as most of you know, especially the mothers here, the relationship of a mother to her newborn is really special. Very intimate, loving, close. And Everly didn't tell me this right away, but she knew something wasn't right. She couldn't put her finger on it. It took a long time for us to put our fingers on it. But the first really outward manifestation that I saw was this first febrile seizure while we were visiting Wahpeton. So we moved to Wahpeton, Breckenridge. Wahpeton Clinic, Wahpeton Seventh-day Adventist Church, our home in Breckenridge, St. Francis Hospital in Breckenridge. That was our community. And Rhonda came along June of '77, 6 months into our stay there. There's our babies. Aren't they cute? So we have Wesley and Rhonda. And Wesley is developing into a special needs child. He started having another kind of seizures, and it took us a few years to get things settled down, find the right medications, get that managed. But the seizures were eventually quite easily controlled. That weren't a long-term issue, but his behavior was. He was as hyperactive as I've ever seen a child. And when you have a family who has a child like that, Any family who has one or more loved ones with special needs needs help. And to get help, you have to get people's attention. You have to be persistent. You have to know where to go, who to talk to, and you cannot give up. Otherwise, you'll be ignored. Or they will think you're okay when you're ready to fall off a cliff. Or you'll catch a few crumbs from the master's table. You know. You've got to be persistent to get some help. Fortunately, over the years, a wide variety of people have dropped into our lives, not out of the blue, but they've dropped in to help us. First of these was Sonia. At the hospital, of course, I got acquainted with, this was maybe a 60-bed hospital. So I knew all the nurses and they knew me. And I quickly got acquainted with Rosella and Marion. Rosella was an LPN who staffed the emergency room in the evenings. So whenever a patient called and I was on call and I told them I'd meet him at the ER, well, Rosella was there to help us out. Her best friend Marion was the RN supervisor, so I got to know Rosella and Marion very well. So they soon heard from me that we needed some help with the babysitters. When you have a special needs child, you can't just call any kid in the neighborhood and say, come on over. That doesn't work. It's got to be a special person to take care of our special son. So Rosella says, well, my daughter Sonia, I think she could handle that. So we had Sonia babysit a couple times, and she was wonderful. She was absolutely wonderful. Now, we tried to take Wesley to church. We really, really wanted to be together as a family in church. But it didn't work. His behavior, we just could not do it. I mean, the church can only take so much commotion, right? Right, Pastor Robertson? So, we started leaving Wesley home with babysitters. Not everybody liked it, but we did what we had to do. And Sonia did that for 4 years. She was terrific. After Sonia, we found another girl in the neighborhood, Angie, who also worked out very well. I really had to do a little teaching with Angie. Angie could not tell time on a clock unless it was digital. Well, that creates problems sometimes, depending on where you are and what kind of clock's on the wall, right? So I really taught Angie how to read a clock. And Angie did great too. And there were other people who helped us. No. I deleted the slide, sorry. A lady from Wilkin County. That's the county. Breckenridge is the county seat of Wilkin County, Minnesota. A lady from Wilkin County found us a camp in the western suburbs of Minneapolis, where we left Wesley a couple times for a week while we got a much-needed break. She also found us a facility in South St. Paul that had a few respite beds where we could leave Wesley. We left him there 2 times, maybe 3. I'm not sure I remember. Anyway, one of those times we left him at the respite facility. We were out in California, Beverly, Rod, and I. And they called, said, Wesley escaped and we can't find him. Okay, what do you want me to do about this? Like, I'll be right over? Well, They called back later. We found him. Relax. Okay, we relaxed. The respite facility had a locked wing where they had the respite beds. And they had a buzzer on the door. And instead of having the door buzz every time the staff went in and out, the staff had a little trick to silence the buzzer, and they'd go out. Wesley saw that. So he did it too. And lo and behold, he was gone. Well, he was, a block or two away. He'd gotten hungry, tried a back door. He was in someone's kitchen raiding the fridge. And they called the cops, took him back to the facility. It's always a good place to look for Wesley, or his food. So you've got to have help. And we had people help us. Even Barb, his special ed teacher in Fergus Falls, she did on several occasions stay overnight or over a weekend with Wesley and Rhonda while Evelyn and I got away. So, as a special needs family, over the years, you meet some of the greatest people on earth who help you. One of the highlights of our time at Breckenridge was the St. Francis Hospital Choir. One year, Evelyn and I were doing a lot of music in the church. We had a little music group we called the Moment of Truth Singers. We did a lot of music in the church and in some area churches. We did a passion musical, His Last Days by Dallas Home, in costume. And that was really fun. So the people knew that we were doing a lot of music. So one year the hospital employees wanted to get together a little choir and impromptu and do some Christmas carols for their Christmas party. Okay? So Rosella, you met Rosella earlier, Sonia's mom. She asked me if I'd direct this little choir. I said, sure. So we got together once to practice, It doesn't take a lot of practice to sing Silent Night. O come, all ye faithful. So we did that, and it was really fun. The people at the hospital really liked that. And they said, well, let's do some more. Let's do this again. So Evelyn and I talked about it. We went music shopping. We found an Easter musical that we could perform with a choir to a pre-recorded soundtrack. And Evelyn helped me and Rosella get the choir together. Evelyn played for rehearsals. She led the alto section. And we did the Easter musical The Day He Wore My Crown. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Of course, the crown is the crown of thorns, which should have been mine, but it was his. The day he wore my crown. And that was so well received. We did 2 performances in the amphitheater at the Wabaton State School of Science. Full house each time. The community just loved it. So did the hospital personnel, the administrators. So they told the Mother House about it. The Mother House in Little Falls, Minnesota. So they invited us over to sing for the staff at the Mother House. So we went over there. Evelyn and I went ahead. We took the equipment, the speakers, the soundboard, the mics, the tape recorder, knocked on the door, invited in, welcomed. Everybody was great. The sister who let us in sat us down in an office and said, I need to go get somebody. I don't remember who she was going to get. So Evelyn and I are sitting there in the office. And over the intercom comes this, Sister Mary, please call extension 666. To this day, I have to believe that they had a closed circuit camera. They wanted to see what this Adventist young couple would do at the sound of 666. I don't know if that was a real extension or not. I have no idea. I didn't check the phone directory. Anyway, we performed there, and they loved us as well. We did, I think, 3 more Easter musicals in Wahpeton. We did 1 Christmas musical, Love Transcending. We had a great time. A very ecumenical group. You see the choir there. This is our first-year choir. You see me on the left. In front of me is Father Reisinger, the hospital chaplain. On the right side in front is Bill, our narrator, and behind him is the administrator and all the singers. All denominations, Catholics, Lutherans, Methodists, Adventists, Church of God, just joining together, praising God. It was beautiful. The last two years or so of my practice there, the medical climate was getting quite interesting in that part of the United States. The big hospital clinic organizations in Fargo were buying up the small practices all around, competing with each other, buying doctors, buying clinics to secure their referral base. And they were going to buy up the clinics in Upton and Breckenridge. I just didn't want to get involved in that, so myself, my surgeon partner at the Upton Clinic, Jim Wasmiller, and Becky Hafner from the Breck Clinic, a family practitioner, we left our clinics and joined forces in the medical arts clinic right next to the hospital. So we shared staff and space. And one of the things we did was we sponsored a co-ed slow-pitch softball team. And you can see there, I'm not sure, but I think that's a first-place trophy. It certainly looks like a first-place grin. I think we won the championship one year. But then it was time to move. I mentioned the medical climate, but there was another huge factor. Well, there were 2 other factors, one that we weren't cognizant of yet, but we should have been. The one that we were aware of was Rhonda's education. Rhonda was doing nicely in Richards Elementary, 2-room school. I was chairman of the board. Evalie and her best friend Letha did music programs with the kids. But Rhonda was in 5th grade, headed for 6th. And what do we do when it gets to grade 9? Rhonda was, and she readily admits this, such a homebody that sending her away to boarding school, either to go to Adventist Academy or Maplewood, they were about equidistant from us. We didn't think that would work. Public high school, we were not willing to go there. So you add that to the medical practice climate, the need to find a place where we would have more options for Rhonda as she progressed in school. We started talking about it, deciding we got to find a place to move that will meet our family needs. And it just so happened, here's another, is it a coincidence, is it not? We were participating in a wedding at the Wahpeton Adventist Church. A young man named Rick McTaggart. His dad, Al, was the lab and x-ray man at the Wahpeton Clinic. So I knew Al very well. And Al and Tina sang with us in Moment of Truth Singers. So Evelyn and I were going to participate in the wedding. I'm not sure if we were going to do a duet or if the Moment of Truth Singers were going to sing. Anyway, we were going to participate. Because I was back behind the platform, and I wouldn't have been back there if I wasn't have something to do. So I was talking to the groom, Rick's brother, Scott. I was talking to Scott and told him, we're thinking of moving, here's the reasons why. And Scott says, well, why don't you come and look at Portland? Oh? Scott at that time was the manager of the Providence Medical Center's mobile cath lab. At that time, Providence had a semi-truck with a cath lab in it that they would take around the state of Oregon and do heart caths, coronary angiograms, so patients wouldn't have to always come to Portland. So, okay. I take a trip out to Portland. I interview at 3 clinics affiliated with Providence. I interview at 2 affiliated with Portland Adventist. It was funny. It's kind of like, well, I'm in town, why not? And since I see Jim here, when I came out, I was in a quandary over this. You remember this. I was in a quandary over what is God's will for Everly and I. Where should we go? So I asked Elder Jim Robertson. Jim was no help. I even bought a little book by Morris Fendon, How to Know God's Will for Your Life. A little book, probably cost me $10. I read it through. I was disappointed. I mean, Morris Fendon, the sum of his book was, to know God's will for your life, you need to know God. And I spent $10 for that. He could have given me a mimeograph sheet. It cost me 25 cents. Anyway, the other option for us was the Martinson Clinic in Wayzata, Minnesota. Wayzata is a suburb a little farther to the west of Minnetonka, where I'd grown up. The Martinson Clinic was where my dad and mom and I had gotten our health care when I was a little boy. We interviewed there, and they were really wanting me to come there. So it was Martinson Clinic in Wayzata or Portland. Back home or the West Coast. And this thought kept coming back to me. It wasn't a voice. I didn't have a vision. But I kept having this, you can't go home again. You can't go home again. Well, on the surface, that's obvious, right? I mean, home isn't what it was. My folks are gone. Our house was sold. Most of my relatives were gone. People had moved. Home wasn't what it was 25 years earlier. So of course you can't go home again. But was there something deeper there? I wasn't sure at that time. Well, we talked about it. We prayed about it. And we decided to move to Portland. So I called up, I decided to join Portland Adventist. I called up Portland Adventist and said, we're going to commit to you. So we're at home in Breckenridge. I get a phone call. I'm in the kitchen. And it's from a realtor who'd been referred my name to help me find a house. And I finished the conversation, and Everly says, who was that? I said, it was Chuck Weirick. He's a realtor in Portland. Oh, do you know him? Well, I think I might have roomed with him at PUC. What? You think you might have roomed with him? Well, hang on, let me think this through here. Maybe it's a guy thing, I don't know. Chuck Rurik. Yes. Remember that house I was in? The front bedroom, 2 bunks, 4 freshmen. Chuck Rurik, I'm sure, was one of those freshmen. Well, she says, I'm glad we got that settled. We know your roommates were now. So we come out to Oregon, do the paperwork with Portland Adventist. We go house hunting, find a house we like, make an offer, and it's accepted. So we go back home, finish up our time there. The Oregon Conference moving van comes, picks up all our stuff, even my little red Fiat convertible in the back of the van. They take off. We set off for Oregon. First day we drive all the way across North Dakota, which is a long ways. Stop in Glendive, Montana. The second day we drive all the way across Montana. Have you ever driven all the way across Montana? It never ends. Never ends. We make it to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Find a motel that still has a vacancy sign. All they have left is a suite. Okay, we'll take a suite. Emily and I, Wesley and Rhonda and Sandy, our cat. We didn't think about the cat. So we're in the suite, and I called Chuck to check in on the house. Bad news. Bad news. The builder has pulled the offer. We're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Chuck. We're not going back to Minnesota. Well, come on down. We'll figure something out. So the next morning, Emily and I, Wesley and Rhonda and Sandy pack the station wagon and take off for Portland, where we have no home. Well, Portland Adventist was extremely supportive. They put us up in a motel for 3 weeks while we figured this out. Went house hunting, finally found a house. 3 weeks wasn't so bad for me. You know, I could and did start work at the Rockwood Clinic with Dr. Gray and others. Rhonda started at Hoodview Junior Academy. She was picked up by the school bus driven by a nice lady named Rosie. You know Rosie, our secretary. But Everly, Wesley, and Sandy had nowhere to go. Fortunately, another couple drops into our life. Wanda and Raleigh Anderson, longtime members of Mount Tabor SDA Church. They have been family friends of Everly's family for a long time. In fact, Everly's mother, Pauline, sang at Wanda and Raleigh's wedding. So Wanda and Raleigh took us under their wing. They invited us over for a couple of dinners, 2 or 3 dinners. They let Everly come over with Wesley and wash clothes. You know, people helping people. We find the house, the one we're currently still in. And we move in. Wesley now can enroll in special ed. He could not enroll until we knew what school district we were going to be in. No one would take him because they didn't know if he was going to be their kid or not. Well, now that we had an address, some school district knew Wesley was their kid. So Wesley got in school. Rhonda was in school. I was at work. And everybody could start making it home. People helping people. Next time I talk, we will start a life in Portland. And my title will be Graduating to What? Eventually, Wesley was going to graduate. To what? Well, we'll figure that out later.